Shadow Show.
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 Shadowing it.
Would you guys be kind enough, please, to find for me just some general reaction to that Stormy Daniels conversation that we had yesterday? Because I imagine when we're trying to talk to Ricky Williams and Stormy Daniels together that people are just immediately going to get bothered by that. I don't know, but I assume it. And the only comment I have seen so far, it's legitimately the only one I've seen, is today we have a big surprise, a guest on our show. She's an old porn star who is super uninteresting, but she doesn't like Donald Trump, so we think she's a genius and will allow her to scream into our echo chamber for 20 minutes. I believe that that's what the general reaction to that is going to be. And I'm just curious if you guys can find me some stuff so that I can get some of the commentary. I don't imagine that any of the commentary is any good.
Top reply to one of the videos on Twitter: Dan is clearly compromised. Doing this political interview makes zero sense for a sports show unless the blackmail they have is very bad.
My favorite part was her boyfriend constantly opening the Winnebago door just like we weren't doing an interview. Just constantly throughout it, opening and shutting the door.
Did everyone today have plumbing issues? Why is there such a skeletal crew here today? Amin has gotten over his stomach problems from last week and has made an appearance here in a way that we're very happy about.
Yes, and everyone will be happy to know that I tempted fate by having a shawarma at midnight last night, so fingers crossed.
My God.
Put it on the poll, please, at Le Batard Show. Are you tempting fate by having a shawarma at midnight?
We designed this for Amin today. This crew is designed to let Amin shine. Today is Let Amin Shine Day.
Can we get imaging for that? Because I would like to shine Amin. I would like to buff Amin, and I would allow him. He had people all over the internet who have nubs screaming at him because his last appearance just took out inexplicably Jim Abbott.
On his birthday, by the way. Did you guys know that? That was his birthday that we did that on?
That was a small caveat we did not know. I had no idea.
Well, we didn't know it at the time, but we did know it. We did know it the next day and said it the next day. But Amin wasn't here because he can't control his bowels because he does things like eat awful things at midnight.
The milkshake, I think, got him with the double burger. Like
it was absolutely the milkshake. The burgers are fine. The food's fine. The milkshake was an ambitious move. I thought it would just be gas. My bad.
This is what we're calling Amin Shine Day.
Okay.
Did we get a better word for nub finally or no?
No. Well, I mean,
everybody with a nub was still saying nub.
Well, Jeremy talked to some medical professionals, and they said residual limb, but that doesn't really help people like that. Everyone knows what you're talking about.
Dude with a residual limb. Everybody's like, what?
Yeah, it's not helpful in any way.
By the way, shout out to Mike Schur for the cosign.
You gonna keep going? Or
I didn't know. I'm. You guys are staring at invisible clocks. I don't know when we start. It's a shadow show.
We've got that. We've got that. Amin, great. We've got that. Amin, can't wait to do today's show. That Amin.
Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. I hear him chat to the noise, move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the walking. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls better tell me I'm awesome, yeah. Hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the sheets. You came for one, man, forget my peace. You take the west, I'll take on the east. I'ma put him in a cage, never let out the. I hear him chat to the noise, move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys, man so tough, but man's keep walking, yeah. Just too sharp with the prize, white girls better tell me I'm awesome, yeah. Hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that.
Chris Cody has rarely offended me the way that he has offended me today, because he comes in here and I'm assuming you're paying a grid of death punishment that is Indiana Jones related, correct? This isn't just the style that you decided to use on a Thursday morning. You're paying a grid of death punishment, correct?
That's right, Dano. I don't really know how he talks.
Yeah, it's not like that.
Jesus
Christ. He does not talk like a cowboy. I don't know what it is that you're doing, but the way that you offended me is that you blasphemed against the Indiana Jones properties. Valerie, my wife, will laugh at me as an adult male because if there is an Indiana Jones movie on television, I still have old DirecTV channels and I'm still watching stuff that isn't streamed. It's just you watch it when they air it and you're stuck with it. And I will stop in the middle of every Indiana Jones movie. Put it on the poll at Le Batard Show. Will you stop on any Indiana Jones movie? And the reason I do that isn't just because I love the Indiana Jones franchise. It's because it's legitimately the first movie theater experience I ever had was the original Indiana Jones. And you can imagine how that would impact a child. The idea of discovering a movie theater as a young person, and I was, I don't think I was yet a teenager, but I didn't go to the movies early in life. And so the first movie you see, to have it be that, to have it be the first Spielberg vehicle that is the introduction to Indiana Jones, it's going to shape the way you watch all the future ones.
It belongs in a museum.
I've never seen a single one. I just can't think of a movie franchise out there that I'm less interested in.
How's that possible?
It's just my only exposure to it is the stupid Hollywood Studios show where the guy with the Hawaiian shirt comes down and then the boulder. It's like, hey, if your best weapon is a whip, then I'm not interested.
It's not a whip. He has a whip. He has a gun. He has these right
Yes.
here too.
There you go. Those are his two most lethal weapons.
The whip
left
is
and right.
the whip is what he's most known for. At least in my through my exposure, the whip is what you associate.
Your
with him.
exposure is from a theme park.
It's just maybe I'll check it out, and maybe if I
You're
watch
not
it.
going to check it
I
out
won't.
if you're
You're right.
already this impressed. Why doesn't your costume have a whip? If it's the main part of the costume, why are you just wearing the leather jacket and the hat instead of having a whip?
It was an HR thing.
Really?
And they were like, no whips.
Can you use a belt?
You got one?
No, actually,
That doesn't really work. A rip-off flea market Indiana Jones with a belt is not the same thing. I don't understand what you're doing. I mean, it should be a whip or nothing at all, but I don't understand why he doesn't have a whip. Why such a half-ass grid of death? This is our first grid of death punishment, and all you're wearing is a hat and a leather jacket.
And a shirt. I look great, I think. As I look up, like, this hat, like, there's something about a cowboy hat with the bill pulled down.
This could be a new look for you. You could just be walking around like that forever. You know, Chris walks in, kind of like Bobby Bowden. Remember, he used to have this Island of Dr. Moreau hat that he always used to wear? And it was so weird looking, wasn't he?
Well, we have a thing that happens around here that is pretty funny, which is our actual styles are so bad that often we are paying grid of death penalties, and people say that's a better look for you than your average look. So when Stugotz is Guy Fieri, all of a sudden people say you should rock the flames on the shirt. When I'm George Michael, people say you should wear rhinestones on a jacket. When Chris Cody is Indiana Jones, people look at him and say, you really do pull off Indiana scones.
Oh, we're going to play that game? All right, we can do it.
I just ended it.
Oh, no. No, you haven't.
You guys aren't going to do better than Indiana.
Right.
You're not going to do better than Indiana scones.
I've been working feverishly there.
All right, go ahead. I'd like to see you do better than Indiana scones. I'm all in with Indiana scones.
Okay, so we've got Indiana Scones and the Temple of Lunchroom.
That's number 2, Chris.
You have a
just so
whole
you
list
know.
ready. Good.
Yeah. Then we have Indiana Scones and the Last Croissant. I heard the laughter out there.
Yes.
No fanfare though, so I guess we'll keep going.
You did get the laughter.
Is this
from
a top
the
5? I can
other
do
room.
it.
Where did this come from? All of a sudden, you did this very quickly.
Now, Dan, if you remember, most of us our age, we think of the trilogy, and that was it. But then they came out with 2 movies after that. One of them was the one with Shia LaBeouf. That was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystals Burgers. That might be a regional thing, Crystals. And then finally, the one that just came out last summer, was it? It was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destinies.
So you didn't do better than I did.
I mean, I kind of felt like the last croissant got a laughter out there that didn't.
Okay.
Indiana Scones didn't get that one.
You got a little bit of laughter through a door that is in the other room. I heard 2 people laugh at a conference table. Our audience is slightly larger than that. No one is going to argue that you did better than the original Indiana Scones.
We have such a skeleton crew even out there that there's only 2 people out there, so it's actually 100% laughter rate, Dan.
There you go.
I don't understand why it is there are so few people here today. Is it because this company allows people to take whatever personal time off they want? Is it because the hurricane has now descended on Florida? Dade County is the only school that's actually in session today. The rest of Florida has canceled education today, and some might argue Florida's been canceling education for about the past 20 years. We need it especially in Dade County, but Dade County, because of the size of this storm. I was on my balcony this morning. This stuff is scary, man. I was on my balcony this morning as winds escalated out of nowhere to 45 miles an hour, and all of a sudden all sorts of things are just flying all over the place, and that's nothing compared to what is headed toward Tallahassee, where our government of Florida continues to take a lot of things that represent nature and try to pave them with golf courses and development in a way that makes us flood worse than most places because asphalt does not absorb things. So I am deeply concerned for not only what is coming to Tallahassee and is about to explode in some great ferocity around 2 o'clock today, but I do believe there's the possibility after today that Florida will be uninsurable for homeowners, that the rest of the insurance companies will leave because they are fleeing Florida.
To be clear, you just described this incredibly impending doom situation facing us here in Florida. And then that was prefaced by, why isn't anyone here today? Is it because you guys take days off whenever you want?
Well, but South Florida is blissfully away from the worst of this.
Well, that doesn't mean it's blissfully away from the bad of it.
Yeah, I mean, the drive down this morning was not great. From Broward County down here, I actually ended up in a little fender bender because of the strands of just movie-like downpour. Chris mentioned that Hollywood Studios ride with Indiana Jones. It looked like that type of rain where it was literally pouring sheets of water onto my car.
Hold on. You were in a fender bender. You bent fender? Did that happen?
No,
you said I was involved in a fender bender.
Okay. My car's okay.
Okay.
Luckily.
Well, what about the other guy? You should see the other guy.
I actually hit a wall, but it's a separate conversation. We'll talk about it later.
You hit a wall.
Yeah, median.
Dude, that's the wall. You should have led with this. What are you
probably
doing?
Sue the company or something because I have to because no one else will.
There you go.
Sue the company.
You put them in danger because you demanded people be here.
I haven't demanded anything. I don't demand anything. That's why
business
nobody's
as
here
usual.
today.
I don't know.
Jeremy, just like Greg Cody, run into walls.
You don't think you're demanding when you kind of make all of these passive-aggressive digs at everyone who's not here?
I'm looking at a skeletal crew, and I imagine people watching this are like, where is everybody? And I'm trying to explain to people when I don't have the answer to where is everybody.
Yes, you're trying to explain, but your first inclination wasn't the weather's awful down here. Everyone needs to be careful. It's, are you guys taking days off like you usually do?
The weather is beautiful here. That before and around hurricanes, when the weather is good, you rarely see as beautiful a sunrise as the one that I saw this morning. There are, however, these outbursts of rain and wind that are unexpected, but if you look at what is happening on these maps, what you will see is all of Florida is in the danger zone and severe weather, including the Keys, including stuff south of us. But this area of South Florida where we are working has beautiful weather. It's not just that it's not dangerous weather right here where we are surrounded by a Ferris wheel and the lovely bay. It's not just that. It's that this is the nicest weather you'll ever see down here. In fact, I was thinking today, okay, because these outbursts are unpredictable and there are all these stray strands. There was an unhoused person who got hit by this 45-mile-an-hour wind that was happening on my balcony that came out of nowhere. And I'm like, if that person is not internet access savvy, what a startling thing to not have any warning whatsoever that Florida is about to be engulfed in storm, and where he was moments ago, totally beautiful, just pristine, absolutely lovely. And then all of a sudden, 45-mile-an-hour apocalyptic winds, and they're about to be 3 times that much.
The winds kept me up last night. Let me tell you that. You say it's beautiful down here. All I heard, woo!
That was just your noon meal or your midnight meal. That's all that was.
That my food was making that noise?
That in your stomach.
Oh,
like
my stomach got it. I was like, I think it was dead, Dan. I don't know if it was still alive. Woo! Don't eat me!
I want to celebrate something from last night in sports, and you guys please get the video for me of the standing ovation that Diana Taurasi got. Meadowlark Media has been following her around all season, doing a documentary on her, and we're going to tell that story because the roots of that kind of greatness are worth exploring. You've heard me say, recently, that the cruelty in criticism of athletes make it, I believe, that today's athletes who have really arrived at a mastery of sports sometimes aren't celebrated as they should be because we spend so much time blaming and criticizing and telling people how it is that they can be better at being athletes. But beyond being a pioneer, which Diana Taurasi obviously is for 20 years, the idea that she would score 21 points in Phoenix's first game of the playoffs and then would leave the court fouling out last night and possibly ending her career. We don't know for sure because she didn't talk to the media. I would imagine because to be great for that long, you have to have a special kind of seething in your soul that makes you not want to talk to anybody and do emotional farewells when you've just had your season extinguished. That's 3 straight seasons that Phoenix has finished under 500. This isn't the way that she wants to end her career, but her playing in her 40s after 20 years suggests a maniacal craftsmanship and dedication to what it is that she's doing to fight off the young people in that sport, to fight off everything after 20 years that tries to take her greatness on a sport that she's built that is now, I got to imagine, better than it's ever been. In terms of what the competition is, because now you have the dollars, you have the path that she built that has all the lights so that others can follow. You're from the area. What does this mean to Phoenix? What kind of star connection does she have to the region?
She's on the Mount Rushmore along with Larry Fitzgerald, Steve Nash, Charles Barkley. She's one of those names, an icon. And Dan, the thing that everyone has to remember is that she's from the era where the idea that, like, I just play in the WNBA and then the WNBA offseason is my time to explore other interests. She didn't have that luxury. She was playing year-round basketball every single season.
Building the league.
Building the league, building the sport, all over the world, in Russia and Turkey, all places like that, where she was incredibly successful. We're never going, because we're not as educated and knowledgeable about the EuroLeague as we are what happens here. But the reality is that's where she made most of her money during the bulk of her career. And she was incredibly successful there. A 6-time EuroLeague champion, a 7-time champ in Russia, a 3-time Russian Player of the Year. And this is when Russia had the best league, domestic league in the world. Turkey, everywhere. She won at college, obviously, at UConn, was incredibly successful there. She laid the groundwork for what it is to be the modern WNBA superstar, and she did it globally. And when you talk about that seething, it's funny, we were talking earlier, and Jeremy was like, well, it's kind of crazy. This is how it all ends. And I said, look, I get it. We all expect this to be her last year. Maybe she expects this to be her last year. But don't be surprised if come March or April next year, she's like, you know what? I got another one in me.
Tom Brady vibes.
Very strong Tom Brady vibes, exactly. I could see her retiring and then coming back. She averaged 15 points a game Like, she's still a productive WNBA player. She's not a superstar anymore, but she's still productive. And Dan, I think one of the biggest things I could say, and I know that people are going to take this the wrong way.
Oh, no. I hate when he's got bad judgment here, and I hate when he prefaces stuff with that.
I mean, I don't have the best judgment in the world. This is true. But she was the player that made me believe, oh, yeah, I could see a woman playing in the NBA.
Wow. Okay.
Watching her play in her prime on the practice court, in games, playing against men. I don't know who she'd guard. She would have guarded. But offensively, absolutely. She was every bit that kind of talent.
That's crazy for me to hear, and I don't want to turn this into too much of a discussion
Right.
because it's an older discussion that people were having instead of games that matter right now in order to talk about this stuff. But you, as a front office executive, saying that the offensive game impressed you that way sort of explains to me how it is that she won as much as she did, because you just mentioned Russian championships. You didn't mention the 6 gold medals. You didn't mention the 3 WNBA championships, and you started to mention the 3 college championships. But you're talking about, a lot of people might look at that and say that she was dominating a sport that was still in its formative years. She was that much better than everyone else, and therefore that's why she was doing that winning. No, she was beating the best of the best in order to make this league what it is, and she was showing you something that suggested to you that she could play amongst the men.
Well, the other thing also, and I know there are going to be a lot of people who's like, well, she's not better than Caitlin Clark or whatever, but the interesting thing I always think about, this is on both sides of the gender aisle, right? Men's basketball and women's basketball, is when we take the accomplishments of former or older players and say, oh, they're not as good as the players today. Why? Because they can't do this, that, and the other. And I always say, is it because they can't do it, they don't have the skills to do it, or because the game wasn't ready for someone to do that? A great example of this is Isaiah Thomas, the original Isaiah Thomas. Well, he wasn't that great a three-point shooter. I said, all right, you got to think about things from Isaiah Thomas's perspective. There was no three-point line in high school when he was playing. There was no three-point line in college when he was playing. So the first time he ever saw a three-point line was when he played in the NBA. Every coach at all levels of basketball taught, hey, if you get a closeout on three-point line, you pump fake and you take 2 dribbles in and go the high percentage shot. The high percentage shot, which is a mid-range jumper, right? So everything you are taught and everything you are told is this is how you play the game. And now you want to be judged by the standards of today. It's like, well, he can't do this thing that everyone discouraged and no one thought was a real thing. Taurasi obviously doesn't have that kind of background, but still the background of, hey, let's not rely too much on that three-pointer. Let's not go too crazy. Caitlin Clark has benefited because of players like Taurasi and Steph Curry and everyone else to grow up in an era where shooting those kind of shots and playing that kind of way is not only accepted, it's celebrated. And so I always wonder, when you think about a Taurasi, for as great a career as she had, 3-time WNBA champ, 5-time scoring champion, right? What would it have looked like if she had played, like if her career started now? Would we be as flummoxed and thrown off as we are by Caitlin Clark?
Her career started 4 years before the iPhone. So
That's crazy.
yeah, she's just been doing it at the top of the sport for a really long time. And I don't know what's the craziest part of it, because I think we've somehow gotten numb to this because of science and how advanced athletes have gotten in taking care of their bodies. Doing this in your 40s is crazy. It's just crazy. I know that Tom Brady and LeBron are doing it in their 40s, but getting to a place where you're numb or you think that it's normal for her to be able to put up 21 points in the first game of the playoffs when she's 42 years old. And it's not just 42. It's 42 with all that mileage on the body of not just playing WNBA seasons, but playing WNBA seasons without charter flights and playing WNBA seasons year-round because you have to have off-season jobs because the WNBA salaries aren't good enough.
I don't know what the comp is in modern sports. Maybe there's somebody from like the 20s or whatever played in some league, but I don't know what the comp is in modern sports of someone playing 11 to 12 months a year and being the best player on their like she doesn't get to go be a role player somewhere else and then hide in the corner. She was the best player on her team for damn near close to 2 decades and playing major minutes and being a major focus and having no time off.
It's not the years, honey. It's the mileage.
What is that? You sounded like Steven Seagal. You did not sound like Indiana Scones.
Chris has been workshopping like all the things. Since he obviously hasn't seen the movies, he's been Googling like what are Indiana Jones phrases or like catchwords that I can say.
Snakes. I hate snakes.
Yeah,
That one's actually not bad, but he's working some of the Dan. He doesn't know how to say it because he's never seen the movies. So he's saying lines like out of order, out of context.
He's not Liam Neeson and
No, it's snakes. I hate snakes. Jock, I hate them because he's in
an airplane,
he's in
a
an
two-seater
and he
biplane,
sees,
yeah.
That's just my pet snake, Reggie. Jock has a weird accent. We don't know where he's from.
Bayou?
they're digging in the wrong place.
They're digging in the wrong place.
And then his friend Salah starts doing a weird dance, and then
They do a weird dance.
Yeah, and then he almost eats the date. It's like bad dates.
Listen,
That's a classic.
they're digging in the wrong place, man.
No, wait a minute.
Is that Joe Biden?
That was Joe Biden. That's Joe. These impersonations are terrible. Every last one of them.
I'll keep working on it.
Well, I'd like you to not because I don't think they're going to get better. You're not summoning Harrison Ford in any way. You're not conjuring. I'm trying to place exactly. The audience will help me with this. I'm trying to place exactly what that sounds like, but it doesn't sound anything like Indiana Jones.
Belloc.
Bill. Actually, that one wasn't bad. Yo, he had it. Maybe he's
I gave him that one. I gave him that one.
But he's just using the words to help you. You would never know that was Indiana Jones if you didn't have the key words from the movies.
I just need a whip, and I'm right there.
Why don't you have a whip? That's something that you would think would be a part of the costume.
Use a belt.
HR.
You're just wearing. What HR? Now look, I understand why it is that generally speaking we don't want whips in the workplace. You might be able to file that under HR, but as part of a costume and part of I don't expect a real whip. A real whip is dangerous. A real whip is a weapon. I expect a fake, crappy Amazon $2.99 jump rope type whip.
I've got a lot of fond memories of that dog.
That doesn't sound.
that's not it.
I don't understand what you sound like, but it's not Indiana Jones. I'm trying to figure out.
Have you ever heard Harrison Ford talk?
I've seen the show at Hollywood Studios.
Oh, my God.
Well, you mentioned the boulder. That's all you remember is the boulder, because that.
How does he jump? Where's he go?
Can you imagine seeing that as a 12-year-old Dan Le Batard in the theater for the first time? Do you realize? Amin is Star Wars obsessed. In 1976 or 77, Star Wars as a movie was graphically, special effects, well ahead of its time. I will tell you that Spielberg doing Indiana Jones, that boulder coming down the way that it was, a 12-year-old Dan Le Batard had his eyebrows singed off and would love movies forever because of that boulder. Amin was working on his Sean Connery, Indiana Jones's dad during the break, and it wasn't terrible, unlike most of Amin's impersonations. The grand majority of Amin's impersonations are just people. You did it like 2 or 3 times during that segment where you're mocking someone's opinion and you give them a ridiculous voice to give that opinion.
An impression when I mock. It's not an This is something that you want to know. My biggest problem with Dan Le Batard, ladies and gentlemen, this is years in the making. Every time I'm mocking someone, I'm doing any of these voices, Dan's like, who's that an impression of? Look, I'm doing an impression of Dan, but that's not how Dan talks. This is Dan's dumb voice that I'm doing right here. Oh, who's that an impression of? It's not an impression. An impression is when I do DMX, which is a really good impression. Or when I do Obama, that's a really good impression too. Or when I do Doc Rivers, it's not Blake's fault, it's Dan Le Batard's fault. I do great impressions.
You know
I
what?
do great impressions.
I stand corrected. Those three are all good. I felt like I was just sitting next to Frank Caliendo right there. How you went effortlessly from DMX to Doc Rivers. I stand corrected and I apologize.
This is also an impression. What are you doing, man? Nazis. I hate those guys.
What happened to down the middle, Chris?
Layered. Did you like that? Indiana Jones doing Biden? Come on.
Indiana Joe Biden.
Where did you get that whip? Where you now have
What?
He now has a whip. Did you have it all along? How is it that whip suddenly made an appearance?
I said, screw HR, man. I'm doing it.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that. You have done a couple of, we're not going to call them impersonations or impressions, but a couple of times during the last segment, you did the person talks in dumb voice and gives dumb opinion in dumb voice. Michael Kay, the New York broadcasting legend, sideswiped a series of fans. And this is something I think, Amin, that is a bit of a plague in sports media, and I'm guilty of it because a lot of times sports fans feel like they're talked down to by people who make their living talking about sports. And here's Michael Kay, and Michael Kay, I would say, is as well-rounded and as strong a resume as you will find in New York sports broadcasting. He's been doing it for a long time, really well, multiple outlets. I believe he began as a sports writer and turned it into radio and turned it into the voice of the Yankees. But at this age, Michael Kay appears to be basically done with the paying customer.
Now, Verdugo's terrible offensively. He's terrible. So they're going to have to make a decision in the postseason. Do we want defense or do we want a guy with some clout in his bat that could actually slug the ball? And that's Jason Dominguez. That's the decision they have to make. But here's where I say damage people. You ready for this?
Yes.
So then there was this thread of people that I said that he had a bad road trip, and then they're jumping because he had 2 home runs. Never said anything about his offense, ever. And then it turned into, well, obviously, he's gotten his marching orders from Cashman, and the gaslighting is beginning so that when they don't have Dominguez starting, he's already paved the way. As if me, on my show and on the game, that I could actually pave the way for the fans not to freak out. So here's my deal. I'm going to make an offer that I've never made before. So those fans that say I got my marching orders from Cashman, I give you a standing offer of $10,000 right now. $10,000 cash. Wouldn't even be a check. If you could prove that over the last 2 months of this year that I've had any interaction with Brian Cashman, walking by him, saying him hello, text, anything, email, any kind of phone conversation, if you mouth-breathing lowlifes can prove that I've had interaction with Brian Cashman where he could, quote-unquote, give me his marching orders, $10,000 when you give me the proof.
I got to tell you, it would be worth it for somebody out there to do the work if you could.
Do the work, because it doesn't exist. Do the work.
One of those mouth-breathing lowlifes has to have a photograph of Michael Kay walking past Cashman at like a coffee shop on the road somewhere in some city. There has to be some sort of interaction between him and the general manager of the team.
I don't know if you guys had the same initial reaction I had, Because mine was, and for the listening audience, you didn't see this, Michael K. We actually played video of him on his own show doing it. He does his 4-hour radio show with a suit and tie on.
Well, he's got to get to the Yankee game after
I
that.
get it. You could take the jacket off, take the tie off, do it at least with the shirt, and then, like, in the car or whatever, put that stuff on. That's crazy.
But that's why Michael K. is one of the GOATs, because he can sit there and talk baseball for 4 hours in a suit, of all things, and still do 4 hours and then do another 4 hours after that. Machine?
It's unbelievable the way that the security guards at the stadium could make this happen. If you have access to the security cameras, you can absolutely prove that they've been next to each other, because at batting practice, you have all of the media members walking around near the field. If you're part of the broadcast team, you can walk onto the field right next to the cage. Brian Cashman has absolutely been down there. They have been within speaking distance of each other. If I'm someone who just works where I have access to the security cameras at Yankee Stadium, I'm trying to expose this. I can't be getting paid so much that it's not worth getting that $10K.
He said 2 months. In the last 2 months, he's here. So I think that's a pretty specific time window. Why is he saying 2 months? What happened 2 months earlier? Were the marching orders handed out then?
$10,000 cash also shows you that he's like me, an old person. The idea that he's not going to give you a check, he's going to go to the bank. He's going to physically withdraw $10,000 because I don't know if there can't be ATM limits that will allow you to get $10,000 from an ATM.
You got to go in there. You got to fill out a withdrawal slip. I don't know if the kids know what that is. Have you ever been to a bank and you see there's this little counter that has a pen tied with a chain because heaven forbid anyone steals these 30-cent pens? That over there is how you used to be able to take out money and put in money, deposit money. You had to fill out one of those slips. Dan, I have a proposal for you. I think we should match Michael K.
Well, I wasn't going to match him. I was going to add $100 to it because I'm afraid of multiple people being able to prove it. I'm worried about Michael K. having to pay this dozens of times because he's underestimated that a number of people can prove that he has walked past the general manager. Because he said, if you can prove I've been next to him, is like, I think that if you're both going to the ballpark all the time, you might walk past each other at some point.
Dan, you've just convinced me. I'm going to match as well.
It's an important cause to Dan, $100.
I'm matching as well.
I'm scared of it.
I'm matching Dan.
I'm scared of 100 New Yorkers appearing. I don't want to pay that much money. I don't want to be on the hook for, because what's going to happen when someone proves this to Kay is he's going to say, no, I meant, that I got marching orders, that it wasn't an interaction, that it was me and him having a clandestine conversation where it appeared that I was bought and paid for.
He said, quote, that you can prove that I've had any interaction with Brian Cashman walking by him, saying hello.
That's the dangerous one.
Texts, anything, email, any kind of phone conversation. Walking by him, all you got to do is basically get like the Juju Roger Goodell scenario, and that's it. That's $10,000 cash. The other thing that makes me think is if he was so sure, like it would be like me saying to someone, I'll give you whatever if you can find evidence of me and George W. Bush hanging out, walking by each other. I know I've never met him, never been in his environment. So I wouldn't say $10,000. I'd say $100 million. I'll give you $100 million because I know there's no amount of money in the world that would make me say, wait a second, maybe I did see him. With this, I think maybe he's not sure of himself.
What about you and Diddy?
Let's change subjects.
Why'd you do that, Tony?
Oh, man.
Tony,
What, Tony?
honest to God, Tony, we're here with very few people, and you are doing that to him.
I'll save us, Dan.
No.
Minor penalty, 2 minutes, asshole.
Like, you don't do that. You don't throw a Diddy in his lap.
What?
Tony, get out of here. Get out of here.
Eric Adams.
He's never been better on the soundboard.
That was unbelievable. I can't believe how good that was. I felt like I was at Universal Studios. I was watching Indiana Jones. That boulder's falling down on me.
You're 12 years old again. Where are your eyebrows?
That's the best executive producing.
By the way, this is on the screen right now. We're showing what Chris's idea of what Indiana Jones is. You got to be kidding me. That's your Indiana Jones?
Tony? Yeah. All right.
Well, there it is.
Try to
You
come
lost.
back.
The thing that I wanted to get to here, just excellently done. You distracted me by doing your job correctly and competently, and I don't mean to sound so surprised by that. It is authentic surprise that you found a whip sound that you've. It's not even that you're just doing it successfully; it's the timing.
The timing is impeccable.
It sounds. I am always amazed in the movies how they sync up the fact that someone somewhere else is making glass crash in a way that sounds correct because the microphones didn't catch it the way that they were supposed to be caught when they were making the movie. So I've actually seen how they do some of that stuff, and there are professional people who will step on glass somewhere professionally to make the sound of glass shattering or whatnot. I was trying to talk about Eric Adams, though, because evidently he was at a...
I'm done.
I believe, as people don't like that we talk politics around here and don't like that we talk to Stormy Daniels, I believe that so many of the people who gravitate with a greed toward power and politics, instead of being interested in altruism, they're just interested in these forms of power grabbing, glory grabbing, money grabbing. That Eric Adams being indicted doesn't surprise me. I don't think it surprises anyone that he was indicted while evidently at a fundraiser of some sort with Joe Biden when it is that he got the news. But such a bad look for somebody, and a criminal look for somebody who has represented New York pretty poorly over the last couple of years, has been largely a laughingstock with a number of the different things that he says publicly, where you feel like this is not somebody who is fit to hold an office of higher power. I'm completely unsurprised that he would allegedly be guilty of an assortment of crimes that they're going to announce later today.
Yeah, the story that I read yesterday, so obviously they did not have the full, we don't know what the charges are.
Those are coming in a little bit.
But the story I read was that it is in part tied to accepting money from the Turkish government, which is, that levels it up from, the ridiculous initial rumors were, he's in the Diddy videos. He's in the Diddy freak-off videos, and that's why, he's been uncovered for that. To, I was like, wait a sec, there's nothing to connect these two things together, which, by the way, has been happening a ton. Anything that...
Too much, I would say. I'm uncomfortable with you even mentioning
no,
it here
but I'm not,
how much it's happening.
I'm not doing it flippantly. I'm saying this is happening with any famous person who's getting into any sort of hot water right now, is people are rushing to make a link to what's happening to Sean Combs because clearly they saw something on the video or whatever, which is ridiculous. But when I did the digging, I was like, oh, in many ways, this might be a lot worse for him, because if you're talking about things about money from overseas influencing American politics, that's one of those things that it begins with an S and ends with an iage. You've compromised.
That doesn't begin with an S.
What, S?
Begins with an E.
It begins with an E.
It's the syllable, guys. Come on.
The
S.
sound, it begins with an S.
S.
Well, I would
Let's
say...
go, guys. Let's get it together.
Iage is not a letter either.
It begins with an E, though. Once you say once the syllable you're using is S and it's also a letter, you understand how that would be confusing, right? You understand how you need to go E there, do you not?
No, I think the sound ends and the sound begins, and so espionage.
I think it would have been more efficient to just say espionage.
No, don't say it. You can't say it.
No one in the world says it starts with and then uses the syllable.
What?
You use the letter.
Well, I'm in this world, and I did it, so...
And that's why we were confused.
Well, guess what? A little less confused now, aren't we?
Very good. We will have the charges here at some point during the show, what it is. And we're going to talk to Pablo Torre, proud New Yorker, about this in a second. But in the interim, just so that if you're unfamiliar with the work of Eric Adams. Let's just show how he would suggest to parents to find drugs in the room of one of your children.
You can look in a jewelry box. A jewelry box of this nature, maybe a simple jewelry box, but if you look through it closely, you don't know what your child may be hiding. For instance, a gun. Look at picture frames and behind them, cameras. Try to determine what's taking place. Behind a picture frame, you can find bullets. You should always, when your child brings in his popular knapsack with many different locations, look through it to see what exactly is your child carrying in addition to a book. Something simple as a crack pipe. Something simple as a baby doll. Could be just a baby doll, but also it could be a place where you can secrete or hide drugs. Run your hands over the pillows and see if you feel anything that's unusual. Like a pillow like this with a button is a perfect invitation to hide something. And I felt something bumpy. I would reach in, see what it is. Just look and see what's inside your bookcase. It could be more than just books. Perfect place to hide cocaine.
I can't believe that video exists. I can't believe that video was made by anybody. It's just wandering around a room, looking inside of things, and then pulling a gun inexplicably out of a pillowcase.
I like the casual crack pipe. Just a little crack pipe.
So
in the
much
knapsack.
cocaine.
You could find drugs in a crack pipe. Yes, that is a place that you can find some cocaine. Let's also check in. He secreted money there. I don't know.
That was weird. Yeah.
I don't know.
I would love to secrete money.
I know. Michael K. is willing to secrete money to anybody who can prove that he was talking to Brian Cashman. How about this from Eric Adams?
When you look at the totality of the year, if you had to describe it, and it's tough to do, in one word, what would that word be, and tell me why?
New York. This is a place where every day you wake up, you could experience everything from a plane crashing into our trade center to a person who's celebrating a new business that's open. This is a very, very complicated city, and that's why it's the greatest city on the globe.
Mm-hmm. The highs and lows.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, like, you could experience anything in New York. Anything from
Look at you. Useless. Just fundamentally useless.
I'm not useless, but
Come on, I mean.
I'm trying to exhibit judgment.
Just fundamentally.
This is what judgment looks like.
No, this is not what judgment looks like. I mean, you made it clear.
I mean, that's not what judgment looks like.
Don't do that.
Speaking of judgment,
don't do that.
whoa.
Video, get that down. Video, what are you doing?
Come on.
This is not what judgment looks like. I mean, where you clearly want to talk, and then I go to you, and you're not saying anything, but you're laughing at the joke in your head. That is not judgment of any kind.
It is, because the joke in my head is very poor judgment, Dan.
Don't indicate to me that you clearly want to talk, and then when I look at you because you think that you have the line after the video, all you're doing is laughing at how funny and bad your judgment is. Without sharing how funny and bad your judgment is with the audience that's listening.
I wasn't laughing at my judgment. I was laughing at the joke. But then when you looked at me with those Dan eyes. You guys ever get in the Dan eyes where you're like, oh, this is my time. And then Dan looks at you, don't you dare fuck this up. I'm like, oh,
No,
okay. Maybe
I was
maybe
looking at you as you clearly want to talk. Go ahead. And instead, you're just laughing at how bad your judgment is. That's what just happened there. Because he didn't want to make a 9/11 joke, because why would you? But Eric Adams just said to you that when he thinks of New York and they ask for one word to describe New York, he says New York, which is not one word, and then says, first thought, planes fly into the World Trade Center. Not great.
Or you can start a business.
Celebrating that you started a new business is incredible.
It is. It is. It's
Dan, you would know.
It's really quite the range that I would know. Yes, I would know how to start a business. You can do that anywhere. You can do it in New York as well. But the flying of planes into buildings is not. Why is video continually?
What are you guys doing?
Video. Stop putting up. Like, what are you doing? What? I want the entire.
All of them.
We've got a penalty, 5 minutes.
I'm with you, Dan.
Asshole.
All of you from the video room, just go sit in the penalty box. Just go sit in there because I don't need your bad judgment and Chris Cody's bad judgment.
Get in there.
And Amin's bad judgment. I don't need all of these things in the same place.
Nope, Jason, you too.
Jason,
get out of there.
Jason, out. Jason, you're not. You oversee everything that's happening there. You're accountable. I will take the consequences of nobody being in that room because I assure you it's better than the judgment that was just shown when everybody was in that room. So nobody in that room is not likely to put up Eric Adams and Diddy together
Get out of there.
when that is not in any way fair.
Wait, how will they switch back now to us?
I don't care.
We're just gonna stare.
I don't care.
I love that.
I don't care. We'll stare at the video room and just leave the empty video room. They don't even have a way to switch over to the video. Tony, you go in there.
You want me to do it?
You go in there with Carl and you figure out how to put the cameras on the penalty box so that we can see all of those bozos with the bad judgment in the penalty box.
This is good. I feel good about this.
That is not something that they should have done.
Hello, Peacock.
Oh my God! I want Tony to go in there and just start pressing buttons.
No, I
Just
know
mess everything up.
So that's your good judgment.
Yes,
that's what.
Look,
That's what.
compared
He
to
made
what
it.
I
He's there.
was gonna say. Oh, there's the. Oh, look at him
He
stare at
seems
it.
to know what he's doing there.
No, he doesn't.
No, he does not.
Oh, wow! Wow! How about that?
Ready, take three.
I wanted to talk for a second in baseball because, because some of the things happening around the sport are getting dwarfed by everything that Ohtani is doing, which is so ridiculous. I honestly saw a stat the other day that Ohtani had 14 hits in his last 19 at-bats after having a double, and I wasn't sure if they were including the 6 for 6 in Miami because it had been like 4 or 5 days afterward. It might have had a bunch of walks in it as well. But you're talking about a ridiculous level of domination from Ohtani. How about this stat from Sarah Langs? The 10 hardest hit balls by Dodgers in the last decade are all Ohtani hits from this year.
No way.
All of them. Everything is 116 miles an hour up on exit velocity. So you've got every single Dodger trying to hit every single pitcher as hard as they can, but Ohtani is hitting the baseball harder than anybody on his team in the last decade. All 10 belong to him.
He's 9 for his last 10 with runners in scoring position. So as they need wins here down the stretch, yesterday he had a go-ahead hit early in the game and then another go-ahead hit to ultimately help them win the game and stay ahead of the Padres. He also had his 56th stolen base, which tied Ichiro for the most stolen bases by a Japanese player in Major League Baseball. Ichiro, he's also got 53 homers.
Dan, let's expand our minds for a second. All right, so we know that Ohtani can pitch. We know that he can hit for power. We know that he can hit for contact. We know that he can steal. What if we took Ohtani and took him to another sport? Right? The Rams need help right now at wide receiver. Do we think that Ohtani could line up as the ex-wide receiver like Cooper Kupp and catch like 90 balls for like 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns?
His name is Shohei Ohtani instead of Puka.
That's good.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Tony, you're so uninterested in baseball that the only way you'll talk about it is by making the best baseball player a football player?
But imagine
Because he's the greatest athlete of all time.
Come on. He can do everything, Dan. Imagine him lining up outside, looking up at Matthew Stafford, hitting him, quick slant, 45 yards down the middle for a touchdown. Come on.
The most stolen bases Bo Jackson ever had was 26.
Too
He's
slow.
doubled that.
Too slow.
I will admit, when you say the stat that he has the 10 hardest balls this season, the last whatever year,
Whoa.
that's just an indictment on whoever's been hitting for that. Like Justin Turner, what have you been doing? Like Freddie Freeman, like nobody's hit one harder ball than he's hit his top 10.
You're now scared about everything that's ball related here. Are you not? No, don't try and go to your cheap trick there when you got nothing else.
Oh, wow. Hell yeah.
Tony, you mentioned Cooper Kupp. Is there right now a healthy white wide receiver in the league? Thielen is out. I don't think Hunter Renfrow is playing anywhere. Is Ricky Pearsall getting?
He got shot. No, he's
snaps.
out. Lad McConkey's still with us.
He's a rookie. He's
Is Alec Pierce still running around?
I think
out
he's
there
hurt.
somewhere?
I think he might be hurt this week.
Not long after a young Dan Le Batard discovered Indiana Jones in the movie theaters, I, at the advent of cable television, got into wrestling because what had been Saturday afternoon programming with Gordon Soley on television that was regional wrestling and would always be a drunk Gordon Soley announcing that some star wrestler was fighting locally against Wild Bill Schneider in the beige trunks from Opelika, Florida, who never won a match. All of the matches were terrible, and then the USA Network starts with cable television, and Vince McMahon is essentially, before Mean Gene Okerlund, Vince McMahon is the original wrestling sideline reporter that I'm introduced to. To see Vince McMahon rise to the level that he did, and in this time where we see how power corrupts with Diddy, Vince McMahon has been disgraced publicly in a way that shows you how awful people can be when they rise to the level of power that Vince McMahon rose to. The documentary that Netflix is presently airing on Vince McMahon must be interesting. It has to be interesting, so interesting that Vince McMahon tried to buy it back unsuccessfully, reportedly, because he never wanted it to air. This is a trend that's been happening recently. Oprah bought hers back. We've talked about this. But the one I wanted to talk to you about, Amin, because I've seen it reported now and I can talk about it, but I've seen some of what's happened behind the scenes, and it's made me feel terrible for Ezra Edelman. Ezra Edelman is a friend, and I don't want to talk too much about this story, but I do want to talk about the details around this story, because can you imagine that you're Ezra Edelman and you have made an Oscar-worthy documentary for ESPN that totally changes the game on how content is produced, because what you made about O.J. Simpson was so deep and powerful that people now want to hire you at every turn, and you've got to choose your next project as someone who is exceptional at what he does, meticulous about what he does, but goes into a very dark hole to make these things because of how long and consuming it is to do something this thorough about a public figure like O.J. Simpson. Ezra Edelman's next project after that, he had an assortment that he could have chosen from. What he chose, and there's pressure on this choosing after you've made the O.J. Simpson documentary, what he chose was Prince. And he has spent the last several years buried in that the way that he was buried in O.J. Simpson. And it will never see the light of day. Because it is caught up in a bunch of legal shit, and it is evidently done, but the Prince estate is having some objections, and now Netflix is worried about those objections. And I don't know, again, I don't want to speak out of tune here because there's a lot of stuff here that's private and not known, and I'm not well-versed enough to speak thoroughly about this. But I wanted to talk about the idea of you go from making the documentary that solidifies your name and puts you at all the Hollywood parties. Everyone knows who you are because you've made something so good that everyone wants your next work. And you have not seen a next work from Ezra Edelman since then, because he was very meticulous about the subject that he chose, because he knew he had to rise to the level of O.J. Simpson. And everyone listening to this would say, oh my God, that guy going into the mysterious life of Prince to find out everything that there was about Prince, and then finding out things that evidently are so dangerous that now it looks like this is caught up in a stream of power that even crushes the ability of somebody who does great work to get that great work in the light because of whatever the fight is around that.
So, all right. So let's start with his OJ doc wasn't just Oscar worthy, it was Oscar winning. He won an Oscar for it. It's the first Academy Award ESPN has ever won, and the only one to my knowledge. Number two, people point to it as perhaps the greatest documentary of all time. It's up there with all the great Ken Burns and Hoop Dreams and all the Senna, all the other great documentaries. It's up there, but it was transformational, and I believe it kickstarted this idea of the deep dive into these huge figures. Now, the difference, Dan, and I don't know this is me finding out right now from you about any of this. I did not know Ezra was working on Prince, did not know that there were complications. But I can, from this seat right here, tell you the major difference between doing that doc about OJ and getting deep on it and doing one about Prince and getting deep on it is OJ did not have a reputation that anybody was interested in protecting at the time of Ezra doing this deep dive. So Ezra could find out all the dirty things, go all the way deep into racism in Northern California in the early 60s, and this is what OJ grew up through, and this is who he was, and the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. You have a freedom because no one's going to be, hey, don't say that about OJ. That's my guy. No one's doing that. Prince is a different story, man. Prince is an economy. Prince is beyond adulation, beyond the love, beyond the thing that he did for so long that brought so much joy for so many people, so many generations of people. He is a business. Even in his absence, even in his death, there is a money-making machine. And that money-making machine, for the better part of Prince's life, has kind of kept his reputation above ground. Yes, he's a little, eccentric and all that, but never the kind of bad pub that his contemporary Michael Jackson got, right? Michael Jackson was hit with child molestation allegations and all types of stuff and turned into a sort of a freak show physically right before our eyes. So in many ways, to throw rocks at Michael Jackson, easier. Prince is a business that has been protected and groomed very well out there. And so I can totally see someone like Ezra could say, okay, let's tell the Prince story, and finding a lot of shit that business, forget about the fans, forget other people, that business finds extremely threatening.
It goes without saying that Ezra Edelman diving deep, trying to do something like the O.J. Simpson documentary on Prince is going to find out all sorts of things that Prince's mysterious empire would like you not to see. That seems fairly obvious that if he spends time doing this kind of thing, and it's not just time, it's years. It's years doing nothing else. It's years with a carefully chosen project because you know what came before and you know what the expectations are on excellence when you've already made something that is excellent. When Lin-Manuel Miranda made Hamilton, whatever your objections are to Hamilton, I legitimately, because I know Amin's got some objections to Hamilton, I immediately thought to myself, my God, the burden of expectations after you've made that to try and reach that, never mind top it. When you've made the O.J. Simpson documentary, you're going to be super careful, if you're as excellent as Ezra is, about what your next choice is. And then he's done all the work. The documentary's done. It's been done with years of meticulous reporting because this man is unbelievably thorough. To have all of that done and to have it put in a drawer when you've spent years obsessing about it, it really does hurt me on behalf of Ezra Edelman to see it tied up this way. But it also shows me, Amin, and we're going to talk to Pablo about this part in a second, because Anna Wolfe, the reporter in Mississippi who has outed Brett Favre for a series of things, is now having the full weight of power pressed against her in a way that is punishing what looked to me like unimpeachable work. When people get to power, they can crush art and they can crush good work if they get to so much power that they can take out someone as powerful as Ezra Edelman, whose work everybody would want to see because it's universally applauded and on subject matter, I mean, in Prince, that all of us would want to watch, not unlike with Vince McMahon.
Oh, it's a great choice. When you were saying he had all these options, what's his next thing? When you said Prince, I'm like, oh, that's perfect. I can't think of a better choice. But it's also the least surprising thing in the world that Prince's estate is putting up a fight on this. Like, with all his, once he passed away and the rights to his music, like, they fight everything. So it's, to my point here is Ezra had to know that of all the subjects out there, this is going to be the toughest one to make.
But is Prince's estate bigger and more powerful than Netflix? Like, that's where the push and pull of dynamics are, right? Like, Netflix is one of the most powerful content machines in the world, yet Prince's estate has the opportunity and the power to be like, nah, it's not happening, and that happens.
The thing that I'm interested about when power meets power is Vince McMahon tried to buy this Netflix documentary back, reportedly, because he didn't like what was in there. We talked about Oprah Winfrey actually buying the documentary back from Apple because she was an executive producer, and she didn't like where it is that it was headed. And what ends up happening when people in power control the power is that the truth does end up getting obscured. When I get to this story from ESPN.com on Anna Wolfe, you guys, anybody who cares about journalism out there is going to be made uncomfortable by what happens when a small local reporter in Mississippi is trying to advocate for the poorest people in the United States. She does so with reporting that doesn't have, I don't believe, anonymous sources even in it. And now she is being pushed to either reveal her sources when the governor sues for defamation, Mississippi Today, or Brett Favre is out there litigious and powerful people are trying to obscure the truth. You get a tiny little reporter trying to fight on behalf of the best things, having to risk going to jail to protect sources just because of the way the power is being wielded against wanting any of us to see what is the truth, because the truth makes powerful and rich people that uncomfortable.
It's shocking to see the details, and if you read the ESPN.com article, it sort of lays everything out. But to see that Anna Wolfe is in this position where the governor didn't even file a lawsuit within the first year of this article being out there. It wasn't until some public comments were made by the person who ran, I believe, the company for the newspaper, that then later on they decided, hey, you used the word embezzlement. That's not what this is. We're going to go after you. And now Anna Wolfe, who's someone who won the Pulitzer Prize for the work that she did on this article, is potentially facing jail time for contempt of court. It's completely wild story.
Let's go to someone who has some journalism expertise here, Pablo Torre. He is doing extraordinary work. He is one of the very few non-athlete podcasts that has broken through in the podcast field. Pablo Torre finds out. Help walk the audience through something that generally they roll their eyes about around here, which is journalism and my care about journalism. We had Anna Wolfe on several times. Again, young reporter doing such good, thorough, and exhaustive work that she wins a Pulitzer Prize for creating a real mess for Brett Favre and powerful people who were, smitten and hypnotized by Brett Favre's charm, and ended up giving away money that was supposed to allegedly go to the poorest people in America to, be rich and famous and support rich, famous causes, build a volleyball court, etc. Pablo, when you read this story by Mark Fonaru-Wada of ESPN, what were your thoughts? Because I'm getting uncomfortable thinking what is Pulitzer Prize winning work that should be celebrated is now putting her in the position where she will have to go to jail for protecting sources if she wants to protect them. And I can't believe how unpleasant this is.
Yeah, Anna Wolfe, who I've also interviewed previously to talk about her reporting, she is somebody who is a far better avatar for what journalism is as a concept than any sort of slogan like democracy dies in darkness or any of these other things that make journalism out to be this grandiose, truly democracy-saving enterprise, because what she is the reality of it, which is you're a person who has voluntarily voluntarily tried to tell the truth with a degree of difficulty that people on the internet who are not subject to any sort of code of ethics are not beholden to. And a basic standard of journalism, again, this is all self-imposed degrees of difficulty to demonstrate that actually this is true and real and unbiased. And what she has decided to do is what journalists should do, which is say, I will not give up my sources because the public interest actually demands that she go to jail over the disclosure, the forced disclosure, the attempted forced disclosure of the people that are telling her the truth. I mean, this is real shit, man. You know, like this is the reality of what it is to actually do work that jeopardizes powerful people.
I'm going to play the dumb guy here. I am not as familiar with the later kind of developments here. What exactly are they asking of Anna Wolfe, and how is that possible given the First Amendment?
Yeah, so the former governor of Mississippi is this gentleman named Phil Bryant, who is a character, one of the protagonists in the story that was originally reported and has been shaped by Mississippi Today, which is where Anna Wolfe works. And what Phil Bryant has been claiming is that there is bias, that this outlet is biased against him, and that in order to prove this, he is demanding that he know that it be disclosed who spoke to Anna Wolfe. Notably, this is not so much about the substance of the reporting. It's merely now the allegation of you guys cannot tell the truth fairly. Prove it by showing us who you actually talked to. Hand over notes, hand over sources, hand over internal emails. This is what the lawyer of Phil Bryant has been claiming. And so, again, it's not the reporting at issue. It's the allegation of bias. And so another just, I think, useful context for people who aren't super familiar with this story, you know, the other instigator, the other instigating event of this story, I should say, is the state auditor of Mississippi, who was the guy doing document dives, a government official, into Brett Favre. And that gentleman, Shad White, state auditor of Mississippi, who I have spoken to, interviewed myself, is a Republican. Go on Twitter, see what he tweets about. He is not a Democrat, okay? He is very much almost culture war adjacent Republican who saw corruption of a kind, allegedly, that was so massive that, of course, he needed to do something. And so anyway, my point being here, Republican Phil Bryant saying you guys are biased against me specifically and politically as well. It's farcical, frankly.
But how does that? What about that is criminal? That sounds like a civil case, if anything. Like, hey, I'm suing you for defamation or whatever, and I want to see where the sources in the documents. That doesn't sound like where she's facing jail time. Why?
Well, just in protecting of sources.
No,
right?
no,
This
no.
is
Dan,
a journalistic ethos.
No, Dan, that's not. I get that part. I'm saying this former Governor Bryant's case seems to be, hey, what you said about me was biased or whatever. That's not a criminal charge. So that sounds like a civil suit, if anything. How could she be facing jail time for what is a civil suit is what I'm asking.
From what I understand, it is a situation where they want her held in contempt of court for not revealing her sources. That's the problem, is that what they're saying is you need to reveal all of the texts and emails that were exchanged between you and anybody else. We need to know who was having this conversation so we can know exactly how biased you are. And by expressing their First Amendment right of withholding those sources and saying, no, we can't do that because if we reveal these sources will not want to report to this newspaper anymore. This is damaging journalism.
Right.
They want her held in contempt of court along with her editors as a result. And in turn, that's where you could end up facing jail time. That's the criminal
Pablo,
element.
you were about to say?
Yeah, look, I'll just give you a quote. I just pulled it up from the attorney here. I'm getting the full name here. Bill Bryant's attorney's name is Billy Quinn. And he says, quote, I hope the implication is that if you're a reporter and you lie about somebody, this is the lawyer for the governor, former governor in question, you better be ready to defend your lies. And if you cannot, you should understand that there are consequences that go with that. You're not immune to the law. You're not, period, end quote. And so, look, Amin's question is a reasonable one, and it is a First Amendment matter. Like, this is, look, we are at, again, the reason I say this is a better case study for what journalism actually is than all of the, again, admittedly highfalutin sort of sloganeering, is because this is what it means. Hey, you want to do work in which you are trying to serve the public interest of the poorest state in this country, right? The alleged misuse of funds, TANF funds, directed to those people, instead going to someone like Brett Favre, with the involvement, allegedly, of the governor of the state. Shouldn't you have the right as a journalist to protect the people who enabled this truth-telling? And this is one of those, I believe, potentially landmark cases about how we actually operate in this country.
This segment is presented by LinkedIn Jobs.
Let me read directly from the article. Wolfe and Mississippi Today insist there's nothing inaccurate in their reporting. On Wednesday, the organization received the National Press Club's highest honor for press freedom. Most states in the country, including Mississippi, have recognized at least a limited privilege that protects reporters from being forced to give up confidential sources. Even so, there's no formal shield law in Mississippi, and no case has ever made its way up to the state Supreme Court until now. First Amendment advocates say that without shield law protection, sources would be far less likely to come forward with critical information that serves the public interests. Beyond that, though, and this part is the part that really scares me for journalism, for America, for freedom, and for speaking truth to power. Local reporting is dying everywhere. Local resources are dying everywhere. She has done extraordinary work, and the reward for that is a lot of awards, but now the full weight of money and power falling on her, and I don't know if Mississippi Today and her can handle the full weight and power of that unless they get backing from people who actually want to fight for the First Amendment.
And this is where it gets inevitably complicating, right? Because I mentioned that slogan, democracy dies in darkness, which is the Washington Post, of course. And they do great work, no question. But who bought the Washington Post, right? Jeff Bezos. And so the question of like, okay, who's going to fund the actual journalism here at which people are risking jail time over telling the truth? It's hard, man. Mississippi Today, for people who are not familiar either with, again, Mississippi Today, an outlet in the poorest state in the country, is a nonprofit. And that is such a beautiful thing, right? When it comes to, again, the presentation of we are here to do this job for this reason. We are literally not profiting off of it. But anybody who's known anything about how to monetize content on the internet knows what's hard about this. And so you end up hoping for a benevolent billionaire to save you. And look, Dad, you saw this. Dan, you lived this, right? Why did newspapers go away? You go all the way back to the classifieds being eaten by Craigslist. You go all the way back to the ways in which newspapers were not actually selling news so much as they were selling other things that the news wrote on into your mailbox, man. And we have never figured out how to solve that fundamental issue, which you witnessed in real time.
Pablo, I think that one of the most concerning things about this to me is that people listening to this and maybe even reading this story do not understand the amount of vetting and exhaustive reporting through public records that she had to do to get this to be accurate and in print. And it is so much easier to just file a lawsuit against her, especially if you can get a bunch of nefarious powers together to try and undermine a nonprofit that's simply trying to do the right thing. She wasn't doing this. She stumbled upon Brett Favre. She's not a sports reporter. Like, she was doing good work that was nonprofit advocacy on behalf of this money needs to get to the poor people.
Literally the poorest people as a population in the poorest state. I keep on repeating this because if you were to draw up the movie script version of what is David versus Goliath, you would come up with something like this. And you are correct, Dan, when it comes to what does it take? Like, so many frustrations sort of cascade upon how we actually talk about this story for me, because people don't respect the institution of journalism to the point where I think it's exhausting to hear a conversation like this about how important journalism is, because of course you can go immediately to the many ways in which journalism has disappointed you, in which a newspaper has disappointed you, right? I've mentioned, and I try to start with Democracy Dies in Darkness being this thing that also makes me feel a little bit of ick, right? Because the promise there is only we can save you, only we have the truth. And that's not exactly what journalism's promise should be. Journalism's promise is not, we are the only people who can tell the truth, and it should not be, we exclusively tell the truth and never make mistakes. It's not that, right? It's not that. It's a bunch of human beings inside an institution called a newsroom with self-imposed standards, degrees of difficulty that are trying to say to you, if we impose this on ourselves, if we can disclose to you as much as we can about how hard it is to do this work and the ethical standards we impose that nobody on the internet otherwise is beholden to, then maybe we will have the credibility such that when we're trying to save the poorest people in the poorest state, you might believe us, even if we're being sued by NFL stars and former governors. And if that's not compelling as a better slogan, I struggle to find out what would be.
It's a lot of words. It's pretty
Not as catchy.
It's pretty wordy. It
Not as
doesn't
catchy.
it's not catchy as a slogan.
Yeah,
I can't believe that
problem for
she's in a place where she has to publicly say that she regrets Brett Favre ever being a part of this story, because it was never the intent. And the story would have never gotten this kind of attention, even if it had been the same crime, if it hadn't been Brett Favre. So it's a weird place for her to be. She was trying to do a different thing, which was just the right thing. Brett Favre is allegedly accused of doing all the wrong things with all the people in power doing the wrong things. And now the full weight of it is falling on a 29-year-old's head who was doing nonprofit advocacy that, while not altruism, was pretty damn close to it.
Yeah. Brett Favre's how we got there, right? That's why I started looking into this. That's why you did. That's the power of sports. It's powerful until it comes around and it's like, oh, can we stop talking about that? Because now we've lost the actual plot of what's happening here.
If you want to be a good archaeologist, get out of the library.
Eric,
not how he says
it's not how he says anything.
That-
Eric Adams, before you get out of here, as a proud New Yorker, your thoughts on the news that's about to come down here any minute with the indictment of Eric Adams.
Nobody has been more entertaining while also being more corrupt. Eric Adams during the pandemic was like, there's a question and answer. It was like, Mr. Mayor, why are you out partying at clubs till 2:30 a.m. or whatever it was? And his answer was, the city needs to see their mayor. And I was like, oh, this guy. This is going to be a thing we return to probably. We're gonna remember this guy as being the low point. Yeah, man. He didn't really live in New York. He wasn't really a mayor. He was absolutely in photographs with every person you can imagine who you don't want to be in photographs with. He was in bed allegedly with the Turkish government. A real just hitting for the cycle of New York corruption.
Video?
Come on!
I'm gonna go. Give me that
hell,
whip.
man?
Give me that whip. Give me the whip. Give me the whip.
Give him the idol, then he'll give you the whip.
Oh, Chris was that.
Don't
was
forget
whip
the sandbag.
Chris was doing.
No, God. It's a great. Oh, he's running out there.
No.
Oh, no.
No, don't go down.
This feels, if we had HR, this would feel like a real problem.
I'm just
That's
glad
why
no
they
one
said no
blacks
to
in
the
there.
whip.
That's right. It's Thursday Thunder, and it's brought to you by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear all about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Tony, what do we got?
Guys, I cooked up a parlay for Thursday Thunder. We've got the NFL tonight, Thursday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys, and the G-Men, Amin's favorite team, the New York Giants. The one jersey that he owns, Plaxico Burress jersey from the New York Giants. All right, this is what we got cooked up. First leg, Devin Singletary, who had a nice game against the Browns, 65 yards rushing against a better defense than what Dallas has. We're going to have 50 yards, over 50 yards rushing for Devin Singletary tonight against Dallas. We saw the big dog run all over them last week. 50 yards and over. Second leg of the parlay, CeeDee Lamb, the squeaky wheel, always gets the grease, Dano. 70 yards receiving over for CeeDee Lamb tonight. And the last one, I saved the best for last because this guy is a budding superstar, and I don't know if Dallas's defense can defend him the way they want. Malik Neighbors, anytime tutty tonight. Malik Neighbors. So that's Devin Singletary over 50 yards, CeeDee Lamb over 70 yards receiving, Malik Neighbors anytime tutty, and that gives you a beautiful plus 305 tonight for Thursday Thunder.
It happens quickly in that league where a Tyreek Hill can get erased and the conversation starts about is Neighbors the second best receiver in the league, because he doesn't appear to be someone who is stoppable. But Tony has come in today and he has said something that I believe is never worthy of being said in week 4. He has announced that tonight is a must-win for the Dallas Cowboys. Mm-hmm. A must-win situation, because then the Flames start climbing. Already people are saying this is all Jerry Jones's fault, and he says that's totally fair. It is all my fault. I'm responsible for everything. Not a decision gets made that I don't sign off on. And the Belichick talk will be full-throated by the end of this evening if the Cowboys lose tonight.
Dan, you're looking at the Cowboys versus the Giants, a division game. On top of that, you're looking at your roster and being like, all right, we have a team that can contend now, that's ready now. We paid guys to be ready to contend for Super Bowl now. And you look across the way, and you see the Giants, who are terrible. And then you look up at the scoreboard, and you're like, damn, we're both 1-2. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the screams are going to be much, much louder for McCarthy if you lose to a Giants team that has Daniel Jones at quarterback, a bunch of guys, and Malik Neighbors. But if this is a must-win for these Cowboys, if they don't win tonight,
then they can beat the Steelers next week and be 2-3.
That's right. And
you have them beating the number 1 defense in the league. Okay.
The Cowboys say that they are all in, and you say that the Giants are terrible, but they should have beaten the Commanders if their kicker doesn't get hurt, and if Neighbors makes a 4th down catch that he's going to make the rest of his career. So the Giants, I understand why people underestimate them, but if you have the second best receiver in the league, those receivers for the Giants have been really limited the last couple of years. And you're doing something if you play with Daniel Jones and 3 weeks in, people are putting you in the sphere where Justin Jefferson exists. Because the way there's not another receiver in the league that's being talked about this way after 3 games.
It's from the rookie class, absolutely not. Yeah. But when you can almost save a career in Daniel Jones with a wide receiver like that, it just goes to show you how good you are, that you elevate a guy that is deemed not good.
Lad McConkey would like a word.
That can't be a real name.
That's a receiver, a white receiver for
the
Chargers.
The last white receiver around.
With a name like that, it has to be. His name is Ladd.
Ladd.
And the last name might be a slur. McConkey? That's
Jeremy, why are you laughing about?
That's something I would call Jeremy. Shut up, McConkey.
Whoa. You're right.
But when you put a second D on the Ladd, it makes it less bad with 2 Ds.
BADD. There are only 3 players to have 300-plus air yards over the last 2 weeks in the NFL. They're all rookies. Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors. It's crazy what this rookie wide receiver class is doing, including, of course, Ladd McConkey.
And they told us it would be so. They told us that this is the best draft class at receiver we have seen in a long time. Before I segue into other matters, I haven't said this in a while. I don't think I have said this since we were at ESPN, but I am asking the people who support this show to support the people who support us best when I mention that Miller Lite understands what we're trying to do around here and supports it in a way that deserves the support of our most supportive customers, because what Miller Lite has done for this show in helping us arrive in a place where we have safety and freedom during a very difficult media time is something that we couldn't possibly appreciate more when we need the sponsorship and backing as an independent of sponsors who really believe in us.
And it tastes good.
Oh, it's just such a damn good light beer.
Like, don't listen to us. Don't support us. Just support good taste and less filling.
Can I ask you guys if the segment that we just did with Pablo Torre is something that the audience is simply tired of? Because I do feel like Dan Quixote tilting against windmills, trying to believe in something that slowly dies by the day, which is the idea of local newspapers holding accountable the Eric Adamses of the world, so that it becomes a little bit harder to be corrupt because there's something out there that is trying to do the right thing in calling truth to power. I do feel that I'm beating a dead horse, and worse than that, it's the audio equivalent of beating a dead horse. Nobody wants to actually hear what it is that we're talking about. They just want to have fun with sports.
I mean, I care a lot, but that should actually probably show you the barometer of
Shut up,
the
Jeremy.
audience.
Shut up, McConkey.
By the way, Ladd's first name, Andrew.
Not as fun.
Put it on the poll, please. Does McConkey sound like a slur? Because I do feel like I can hear Eddie Murphy say that in like Beverly Hills Cop, just calling Taggart McConkey instead to insult him. I don't understand why it sounds like a slur.
You went Eddie Murphy, Beverly Hills Cop. I went George Jefferson to his neighbor. The guy from the British guy. From
So even older.
Tom Willis. Yes.
Yeah, Tom Willis. There you go.
Tom Willis, who I believe was married in The Jeffersons to Lenny Kravitz's mom.
Mom, yes. No, I was talking about the other guy, the
Bentley, the neighbor?
The UN guy that it was British guy.
Yeah, the neighbor, Bentley.
Bentley.
I have no idea what you guys are talking
Yeah,
about.
Nobody does.
I get it. No, I get it.
Worse than Indiana Jones.
Beverly Hills Cop was a good reference from 50 years ago.
Well, The Jeffersons is even older than that, but I can make an argument for The Jeffersons as one of the top 10 most impactful sitcoms of all time. It was, in fact, I don't think I have this wrong. I believe that The Jeffersons was not merely a spinoff of All in the Family with Archie Bunker, but that was such an outdated time in television that I'm pretty sure in All in the Family that Archie Bunker actually used the N-word.
Of course!
On television.
Of course! What are you talking about? All in the Family was, but the funny thing about All in the Family was when they made the show, the idea was that Archie Bunker was supposed to be this buffoon that everybody would laugh at. Look at this dinosaur of a man, kind of looking at him like he's Homer Simpson, like this idiot. And instead, they got mounds of like love mail saying, finally, someone who talks like, oh my God. I feel so bad for the people who made that show. They try to make the most cartoonishly buffoonish, idiot, racist, sexist, everything. And instead, they got fan mail.
So All in the Family, the kind of plot for it is what? Because I've never seen the show. I've also never seen The Jeffersons.
I just
so
know
what's the
Okay, so All in the Family is about this working class white family. Archie Bunker is his wife Edith, and
Put it on the poll, please. Are we still making Ediths?
Absolutely not.
It's an old person's name.
You come out 70 years old. Your name is Edith.
Who's the youngest Edith? How old is the youngest Edith?
84.
I just like the idea of a 27-year-old Edith.
No, they don't
Hello,
exist.
Edith.
No. They discontinued Ediths right in 1977. Put it on the poll. Did they discontinue Ediths in 1977?
So, by the way, the son on that show is the famous Rob Reiner, who is the son of Carl Reiner, great filmmaker. So anyways, so it's just kind of like a day in the life of working class. I believe they were in Queens. One of the side bit characters was this guy named George Jefferson, who was a dry cleaner, right? The spinoff in the Jeffersons is that George Jefferson's dry cleaning business turns into a dry cleaning empire, becomes rich, and hence he moves up.
Well, he's moving on up.
Yes.
Thank you.
To a
penthouse
deluxe
in the
apartment.
sky.
All I know is
So it's kind of like Beverly Hillbillies, but just different.
Yeah, I mean, not really. It's because Beverly Hillbillies, they found oil and they became rich, right? Whereas George Jefferson, it's like he built it brick by brick, like my man from Snowfall, right? So now he's got this chain of dry cleaners. He lives in this fancy apartment building, but it's the culture clash of now I'm around all these white people because I'm a rich black person who's still very black, and I got to deal with all these white people who are my neighbors and stuff.
As the mayor of New York told us, you can start a business there.
Yes,
And Jefferson did.
That's who he was talking. He was talking about George Jefferson.
Yesterday, I did not have this as a detour today. Tony, you don't know how much you delighted Amin by asking the questions in his wheelhouse of 1970s television.
But Dan, to that point, like I wasn't alive when these things aired, but I am the last generation, I believe, where we watched things that were created decades earlier. So I grew up on Looney Tunes. Everybody watched Looney Tunes. Everybody watched Tom and Jerry. And these cartoons were made sometimes in the late 50s, early 60s. But we all had the same reference points up until like the generation. I think my little sister, her generation, they grew up on cable TV. And so you had this explosion of other options, Animaniacs and all this stuff, and Powerpuff Girls and all that. And because you have that, it's like, I'm not watching the same old cartoons everybody else has watched. And now it's completely fragmented. But I watched MASH. I watched All in the Family. I watched, The Jeffersons. I watched Good Times. Not because they were contemporary, but because everybody watched the same shows. I watched The Honeymooners. I watched Leave It to Beaver. All these shows.
Put it on the poll, please, Juju, at Le Batard Show. Is The Jeffersons a top 10 sitcom of all time? Yes or no? Because I do believe that Tony might do to The Jeffersons what he did to Ricky Henderson, which is it happened before my time, therefore it cannot be a top 10 sitcom of all time because it happened much before I was born.
I'd have to think about that. I have to do my top 10. Probably Jefferson's probably not going to make it, spoiler alert. But because I've never seen it. But Tom and Jerry, we can all talk about it now, right?
Man.
Ass.
What?
Tom and Jerry sucks, right?
No, Tony.
Right?
Oh,
Tom and Jerry sucks, right?
Put it on the poll,
As
please.
a 10-year-old kid, I was like,
All right. At Le Batard Show, is Tom and Jerry ass? We have a disrespect around here that is not palatable to me because Jeremy in the shadows before, as Chris Cody was, that was confetti.
Confetti just fell.
Confetti fell.
Confetti fell out of
For
the
my
sky.
take, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Confetti just fell out of the sky. That was confetti that was shot off when we joined Peacock. That was weeks ago that happened, and confetti just fell out of the sky that was there from before. But what I was saying is that Jeremy whispered in the shadows with not a small amount of shame when Chris Cody was talking about not wanting to see and not ever having seen any Indiana Jones. He, too, said he has not seen any Indiana Jones.
Because it missed my time period. I grew up, and my dad wasn't like a obsessed fan of Indiana Jones. Neither was my mom. I didn't really watch a lot of action movies from their era. And so in turn, I just haven't seen it. There's so many movie franchises that I haven't seen that you would be shocked by.
The Godfather.
I've seen The Godfather.
Okay.
I mean, that's like my dad's favorite movie. So in turn, I was indoctrinated.
Your father was like Indiana Jones.
Mafia movies for sure.
Too much action, but
action movies, sports movies. So I grew up with like every sports movie. Oh my God. I watched the VHS of like Rookie of the Year.
Oh my God.
I must have watched 75 times before the age of 10.
I'd rather you tell me we didn't grow up watching movies, so I haven't seen any of these movies. And then tell me you watched Rookie of the Year a million times.
Little Big League? Are you kidding me?
And never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Never in my life.
What's a less realistic sports movie? Rookie of the Year or Air Bud?
Come on.
I mean, in Little Big League, a 12-year-old is the manager of the Twins.
The throw that he makes when he finds out his arm is strong from the outfield in the bleachers.
Laser.
All the way to the catcher's glove. Is just he doesn't even like crow hop. He just has his arm like this and is like, all right, let me go. And it is the most ridiculous throw. I mean, Air Bud's more realistic. There,
It's
I
a
said it.
dog.
He can play in the NBA.
Playing basketball.
He struck out Barry Bonds in that movie.
Nice little jumper.
For all of the times that I've been, laughed at or scorned or whatever for not knowing things past a certain point, there's a lot of things that I know past a certain point in a very different sphere, right? Like Indiana Jones, super locked in. Any Eddie Murphy movie from the 80s, super locked in. Back to the Future, super locked in. There's things that are in my wheelhouse. It's just Ricky Henderson stealing 130 bags in 1982, not one of them.
The Jeffersons, not one
Also
of them.
not one of them.
I would say this. I don't know if it's I watch the Jeffersons. I don't know if it's a top 10 sitcom. Maybe in terms of impact, yes, but in terms of just is it one of the best 10 sitcoms ever made? I don't know. I do know this. That theme song,
gas.
It's probably top 3.
The best. If it's top 3, it's third because you will not beat Sanford and Son and you will not beat Hawaii 5-0. You will not beat either one of those.
I think both of them get beat.
No,
they don't have lyrics.
You're absolutely right.
How do I sing along to just like that?
Just like that.
If you want instrumentals, let me tell you right now. You're saying it yourself. You're saying no. Exactly. No, if you want instrumental only, Magnum P.I. has all those beats. There you go. Come on. To a deluxe apartment in the sky. Even people haven't seen it.
So wait a second. They made this theme song. This is not a song that was originally made for something else. They made this theme song for the Jeffersons.
Tony, you just opened the door for me here to talk about one of my favorite things. Once upon a time, kids, television shows had their own theme song. They didn't play popular music. Oh, this song is hot right now. Let's play this. They didn't play like a little ditty and then you just get into the show. They had a whole ass song. A whole ass song that was sung and it was relevant to how was it, that one, Different Strokes. Now the world don't move to the beat of just one.
I believe our friend Alan Thicke wrote that song and Facts of Life, but those are a distant. Look at this. Come on, man. Come on.
It's not better than the Jeffersons.
It is better. Put it on the poll, Juju. Better television theme song, The Jeffersons or Hawaii 5-0. And I believe this was by
Jack Lord.
Wasn't this by my personal Lord? Was this not Quincy Jones? Did Quincy Jones not do Sanford and Son?
Yes, he did Sanford and Son, yes.
So let's do Sanford and Son here, Indiana Scones. I don't want Hawaii 5-0 again.
That is a classic, though.
Oh, it's just so good.
It is.
Book 'em, Dano.
It's not better than.
Well,
the
this is a good subject matter because you're saying lyrics are better than just the music carrying you away. I didn't even.
Oh, this one's the best. I've heard this one before. I just heard it. This one's the best.
This is Sanford and Son, right?
Bum, 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 bum.
Come on.
This is gas.
It's nice and friendly. I like it. It's friendly. Jefferson's was uplifting, Dan. I felt uplifted when I thought I could live in a deluxe apartment in the sky.
Is this what you're talking about, Willis?
No, that's Different Strokes.
This is Sanford and Son.
Sanford and Son was Red Fox as the owner of a junkyard, and his son, he played Fred Sanford, and his son was Lionel. Was it Lionel?
Yes, no. Lionel.
Yeah.
We are really getting older and older with this. You should, with Different Strokes, you should just read about it because it's a Greek tragedy. What happened to all of those child actors, where Gary Coleman was the most normal of them.
I believe I won a Suey one year about telling the story of getting up in front of everybody at a Christmas party at the Suns and saying I wanted to translate a ancient Sudanese poem, and then I simply recited the Different Strokes theme song, but I did it without singing. I just said, the world does not move to the beat of just one
Yeah, I remember
drum.
this. This is good.
And at the end of it, everyone was like, oh my God, that was so moving. I was like, none of you guys got the reference. Really? Nobody? Except one guy in sales sent me an email the next day and said, the episode where they go to the bike store. And I was like, oh, you got it.
I do have one theme song from more modern television that I would put in this category.
The Wire.
No.
That's The Wire. That's Sopranos.
I just wanted to be Tony Soprano.
Well, but
here.
I think this is an actual song, though. I don't think that
Yeah, but
this
just
was.
that.
I don't think that this was. Oh, but wait a minute. But wait a minute.
What about Succession? It's about the vibes. When you hear the song, it's about the vibes. And this song was the vibes.
The way Succession used that song was amazing because they used that song 100 different versions of that song, and it's one of the most clever things I've seen done musically in television.
It is until you begin to realize it, and every scene has the same stings, and I'm like, I got tired of it. I'll tell you who has a great theme song that was not original music, but it was music so original they picked it because it was free. Curb Your Enthusiasm. All that stuff is royalty-free music.
Always Sunny also.
Always Sunny as well.
Yep, same thing.
They use royalty-free music, which is pretty genius. It's genius because they took this royalty-free music and they made it basically theirs. They don't own it, but like when you hear that music from either one of those shows, you always think of them.
Always Sunny essentially is All in the Family, but 50 years later, right? Like they're the worst people in the world, and you're supposed to know that, but they've ended up actually replicating real people that exist in modern society.
Just like Seinfeld. Seinfeld, the same thing. Seinfeld's whole series finale was all about how awful they are, and people didn't get the joke. They were like, what? Oh, they're going to court? It's like, yes, because this entire time they've been awful people, and you guys have just been rooting for them.
You have to know that when you listen to Succession, because I didn't even notice this the first time I watched Succession. It was only upon rewatching that I noticed that Greg the egg, you have to, in order to make an omelet, you got to break a few Gregs. He always had different music than everyone else. Anytime that he was in a scene, it was court jester music.
Yes.
I didn't even notice it until the second time I watched it. We're going to talk immigration next, if you were bored and bothered by our journalism talk. But let's spice it up with a little Hawaii Five-0.
Stifle.